Yeah, it's recording. Are you guys able to view it? So, Microsoft ही setup नहीं है क्या? Teams.
just अभी change कर रहा है।
Capture join कर ले. On में कर.
Just check करने का कि present हो रहा है या नहीं। अभी record कर ले। क्योंकि record तो दे।
ये नहीं सिर्फ चेक करना है, बस मीटिंग में रहना है किसी को. रिकॉर्ड तो नहीं कर रहे हो.
ठीक है, मैं करता हूँ।
हाँ, लैपटॉप से कर ले. So let's start. साउंड ऑन कर दिया अपना. Yeah. Hello guys, we are starting now. So welcome to the lecture 3 of BC106 course, DeFi Decentralized Finance. Before we move on, let's discuss about lecture 2 and assignment 2. Do you guys have any doubts regarding lecture 2 and assignment 2? Okay. So how many of you guys are done with lecture 2? Okay, how many of you are done with assignment 2? Okay, it's fine. So now let's get into the recap of lecture 2 before starting the lecture 3, okay? So what we discussed in lecture 2. Lecture 2 is about architecture of a DApp. DApp means decentralized application. In a decentralized application, in the part of the Ethereum blockchain, we'll have Ethereum virtual machine where all the smart contract code runs when a transaction is executed. And we'll have smart contracts which define some custom logic by the users who deploy it. And then we have JSON RPC providers. So what are JSON RPC providers? JSON RPC providers connect front end with the blockchain backend. If you are a person anywhere in the world, then you need to access the blockchain using JSON RPC provider or your geth node. Geth is something co-implementation of Ethereum blockchain. We'll come to it later. So there are few types of JSON RPC providers like Alchemy, Infura, and Picknode. And what are transactions on blockchain? So transactions on blockchain are the way we communicate with blockchain to make different kind of changes, whether to have a computation on blockchain. Sorry. So I'm continuing from JSON RPC providers. Okay. JSON RPC providers lies as a bridge between front end and the blockchain backend. And using JSON RPC provider, you can communicate with any sort of blockchain anywhere from the world. And there are few types of JSON RPC providers like Alchemy, Infura, and Picknode. And what are transactions on blockchain? Transactions on blockchain are the way we communicate with blockchain to process state changes to the blockchain. State changes in the sense, if we say it is an NFT, to transfer the ownership of an NFT or either to mint ownership of an NFT in simple words. But there are a lot of complex state changes, which we'll discuss later. And signer. Who is a signer? Signer are us possessing a set of private key and its public key, using it to transact on the blockchain. What we usually do is we generate a transaction, we sign the transaction, and we send a signed transaction with the data to JSON RPC provider, which communicates with the blockchain. Okay. So now coming to the point, how is storage enabled in a decentralized way? And how is storage enabled on a blockchain? If you want to store data on blockchain like images, in general, images are around in few kilobytes to last till few megabytes. So saving those images on blockchain is computationally not viable. You need to pay a lot of gas fees for saving the images. So there are few other alternative solutions to save any sort of data on blockchain. They are IPFS, Filecoin, and the Graph protocol. So what is IPFS? IPFS is interplanetary file system. Okay, interplanetary file system. You can access this file system anywhere. You can upload any sort of data on it. You can download any sort of data on it. And once you upload the data, you can't delete the data which is on IPFS. And what is Filecoin? Filecoin is almost similar to IPFS. It is almost similar to IPFS, but there has a difference. The data you store in IPFS is permanent. It can't be deleted. So if anyone wants to run an IPFS node, they need to go through all the data, which is a burden. So to deal with this, Filecoin came up with a solution called Filecoin deals. What happens usually there is you deal with a storage provider for storing your data, and the storage provider stores your data in a decentralized way and gives you a proof regularly that he is storing your data. Okay. And now we also learned about blockchain trilemma, right? What is blockchain trilemma? Can anyone of you say? We saw some triangle, right? Which says three features can't be achieved at a time: scalability, security, and yeah, decentralization. So Ethereum is a layer one blockchain. Okay. And Ethereum is decentralized because a lot of people are validating what is happening on Ethereum. So it is decentralized and it is also secure. But what about scalability? What is the speed of, what is the total number of transactions being processed on Ethereum? On an average, it is around 13 transactions per second. It is quite low. Okay. So to address these type of issues, we have layer 2 scaling solutions. And what are layer 2 scaling solutions? Layer 2 scaling solutions will have a limited set of validators. Validators in the proof of stake sense, who validates the transactions which are deployed, which are run on the blockchain. Okay. So it has limited set of validators, but it uses the security of layer one Ethereum by optimistic and zero knowledge rollups. What optimistic rollups does is they pack all the transactions, they execute it on their own EVM, and all the packet transactions are being put on a smart contract deployed on Ethereum. So whenever we need to verify if this particular block is legit, what we need to do, we need to rebuild all the transactions using the data, and we need to verify it against the data stored on the Ethereum blockchain. So in this way, it uses the security of Ethereum and provides scalability. So a lot of transactions can be processed on layer 2. For example, Polygon uses only a limited number of validators in its validator set. It's around 100. So this is all about recap. Okay. So before we move on to the lecture 3, I have few questions for you to think. Meanwhile, you can also search online. So the two questions are, how can blockchain systems securely integrate real-time asset price data? And what are the mechanisms by which blockchains interact with external data sources while maintaining their core principles? In simple, both of the questions compiled. How do we communicate with blockchains? How do we transfer it real world data? Okay, that is the question. Try figuring out before we reach to this section later. And today's discussion includes introduction to DeFi, lending, stablecoins, automated market makers, and oracles. Yeah.
Can you? Uh, hmm. All right. Firstly, thanks for showing up, guys. Well, I can understand कि after retiring, it's hard to come at 6:30 and get bored by us giving more and more lectures. And Manoj ने इतना serious note पे start कर दिया. But anyway, I mean, before I start, I want to ask a few questions actually. So, how many of you are from first year? Amazing. How many of you are above 18 years of age? Okay. How many of you have your own bank account? IIT का procedure है क्या? अच्छा अच्छा. How many of you have your own DMAT account? How many of you know what a DMAT account is? Okay, so Demat account basically stands for dematerialized account where you can hold your shares and stocks. You know, so cool. Now you might be wondering कि क्यों पूछा मैंने ये सब. It's because so this section deals with the importance of finance. So how many of you like read newspapers or know what is broadly going on in the economy or interest होता है कि हाँ US dollar का price बढ़ गया India INR के comparison में, right? So this must be very very new for you कि physics, chemistry, maths छोड़ के बाकी चीजें भी होती है दुनिया में. And as you as you move along in your journey at IT, you will realize that a lot of people will target going to these quant and finance companies because they pay heavily. So, this is what I anticipated. So that's why I've put in a few slides about introduction on traditional finance. What exactly is finance? Understanding what problems there are in centralized model of finance, and then understand what DeFi is. So, what basically is finance? What is money? And so it's so these three words succinctly describe what finance is. It's moving, allocating, and pricing of assets. Could be money, could be property, could be shares, stocks, anything, right? And there are various functions for this. So there is investing, credit management, risk transformation, blah blah blah, everything. And important. So the next four are the important components of any financial system in any country. So no matter where you go, a country will always have these four. So financial markets, जहाँ पे shares खरीदते हैं. So those are actually the secondary markets. Primary नहीं होते. Primary में very few people have access to the ownership of a company. तो तुम लोग ने सुना होगा कि there is a company, let's say X, private limited and limited, right? So differences होते हैं. So private limited are usually in the primary market where very few people can invest it and internally dealing होती है. Secondary markets are over the counter. So यहाँ पे me, you, everyone, every public listed company, we can go and buy shares and everything, right? Then banks, obviously, तो bank account सबके पास है, bank का function तो पता होगा, right? So what do banks primarily do? What model do they function on? इंटरेस्ट मिलता है ना अकाउंट में पैसे रखने पे. क्या करते हैं वो इंटरेस्ट में? दे गिव यू इंटरेस्ट, बट उनके पास कहाँ से आते हैं पैसे? No one से, right? So they circulate money from different stakeholders in the economy. जिनके पास surplus है वो lend करते हैं, जिनके पास deficit है वो borrow करते हैं banks in form of loans. So then there are regulators as well, क्योंकि people like me and you, we go and we are not really aware about the financial rules and everything, tend to get exploited. काफी सारे scams हो जाते हैं. And to prevent these entry barriers and layman's getting exploited, we have regulatory bodies. So RBI, the Reserve Bank of India, it is like the parent body which governs all the banks. तो कोई भी जैसे डिमोनेटाइजेशन किसका डिसीजन था? आरबीआई का था, राइट? क्योंकि 100 रुपए की नोट पे देखोगे कोई भी करेंसी नोट पे, तो इट इज ऑलवेज रिटन आरबीआई, रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया लिखा होता है, स्टेट बैंक ऑफ इंडिया नहीं लिखा होता. And then similarly, we have other organizations such as SEC is for America. So we have SEBI, which is the equivalent of SEC in India. तो जो shares वगैरह के होते हैं, futures, derivatives वगैरह, तो वो SEBI देखते हैं इंडिया में. SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission, American. And similarly, public and private sector institutions, obviously. So anyone heard about LIC? LIC तो सुना होगा. तो private है, public है? Do you understand difference between private and public? Private मतलब me and you can go and start a company, so that is private, and public is government owned. So LIC is government or private? The LIC is the biggest public company which lends insurance, like life insurance company. नाम में ही है. So the centralized finance is basically the umbrella of all these institutions. And historically, if you see back in Greece and all those progressive countries, you will see that finance usually, so the first stock market was around, paper trading and everything started around 1300s, 1400s, और लोग आते थे एक जगह पर और एक कंपनी को फंडिंग देते थे, which is nowadays called as venture capital and Shark Tank वगैरह देखते हो, तो that was a very rudimentary form of that. So from there it has evolved into huge organizations. So जैसे National Stock Exchange है इंडिया में, Bombay Stock Exchange है in Mumbai, National NSE is in Delhi, Bombay Stock Exchange is in Mumbai, and there are a lot of intermediaries in the transaction. तो देखा होगा ना घर पे अंकल आते हैं and then they tell कि ये म्यूचुअल फंड्स है, इसमें इन्वेस्ट करो, this is the policy, इतनी मैच्योरिटी है, right? तो so he's just then you might be wondering कि इसको क्या मिल रहा है, मैंने इन्वेस्ट किया तो. So there is a huge commission based model, right? So whatever you invest, let's say in a certain bank, in a certain scheme, तो certain percentage of your profit is वो अंकल खाते हैं बीच में. तो इसीलिए that's why he's hell bent on कि इन्वेस्ट करो इसमें, and then parents will have a huge argument कि यार इसमें नहीं करना है, इसमें करना है anyway. तो RBI and SEBI again two most important regulators for all these intermediaries. तो CA वगैरह भी intermediary होते हैं. They help you file your tax returns, गफले करने में help करते हैं. तो there are rules, there are defined rules for every intermediary in the organization, and that is something we'll see is not very clearly laid out in blockchain. And that's why decentralized finance and cryptocurrency पे specifically बहुत scrutiny होती है कि यार ये regulated नहीं है, value बहुत fluctuate हो रही है, right? So all those things are much more evolved in centralized finance क्योंकि ये from many centuries this has been developing. So they have gradually perfected it. And of any centralized finance system, objectives are threefold. Obviously, financial stability होनी चाहिए, बहुत fluctuations नहीं आ रहे wild. Guarding against illicit activity and uniformity. So basically, if I do a transaction X in my country, it should also hold. If I go to US tomorrow and I say कि मैंने ये पैसे यहाँ से यहाँ move किए थे, तो it should be valid, right? There should be some records. Now, what compels us to think is what are the drawbacks of this model? मतलब ठीक है, सदियों से ऐसा ही है, but are there any drawbacks? Definitely there are, right? Nirav Modi case, for example, a lot of scams. Nirav Modi is just the biggest. Vijay Mallya, a lot of scams have happened. A lot of so the Great Depression of 1929. So that was one of the first depressions, right? And then 2008 में बहुत बड़ा stock market crisis हुआ था. So does anyone know that this was the reason why Satoshi Nakamoto first decided to work on Bitcoin and make it public? So that was the reason, because he saw there were a lot of flaws in the system, but that was like the trigger point. कि यार वापस crisis आ गया, so let's make it a thing for all, and then that's how blockchain took birth. And if you realize कि blockchain it is synonymous with cryptocurrency, and it is a misconception actually. People start to know about blockchain from cryptocurrency, from DeFi. So finance say people come to blockchain, when in essence it should be otherwise, but everyone here has learned it that way. So the next few slides are like an introduction on DeFi, and so the premise is, I think I showed here. So I'll give a brief introduction on DeFi, then we'll go to like 4 important concepts in DeFi. So lending is basically purpose of banks, right? So banks में कैसे lending होता है, तो equivalent of that, how in DeFi money is lent out and capital is circulated. Stablecoins is sort of like a currency, जिसकी value fixed होती है more or less. So how do you map it to like real world things? Then we have automated market makers, जहाँ पे so we learn a bit about tokens, कि जैसे सुना होगा Bitcoin एक है, Ethereum एक है, right? DAI एक है, maker है. So there are a lot of things. So how to interconvert, मतलब जैसे yen और INR में है, USD INR में है, तो interconversion कैसे होता है, and what are the laws that govern it? So that is more on AMS. And finally, oracles is something, is actually the answer to one of the questions that Manoj had asked. Food for thought. No? We'll see what they are. So DeFi, right? So these are the various questions that you ask, right? You start from here. So are the financial assets controlled by the user? If you say no, then it is centralized finance, right? So banks are a classic example of this. So banks actually hold your money, right? तो तुम instruction देते हो, वो देते हैं तुम्हें, but it's in the possession of the bank. It's never in your possession, right? So there is some time lag कि इतना है, Sunday पे नहीं निकाल सकते पैसे. If you want a check to go through, you cannot do it on a Sunday, right? You cannot buy stocks or shares on a government holiday or on a weekend, right? The stock markets are closed. And थोड़ा trivial नहीं लगता, मतलब इतना आगे लेकिन Saturday Sunday stock market बंद, you can't trade, so you have to wait for 2 days and then place a order. And then so first answer is no, you straight away come to CeFi, And then when all of these questions are, somewhat satisfied, कि कोई intermediary नहीं है, the person himself has hold of his assets and can single-handedly, whatever, censor the protocol execution, everything. So everything is in your hands, basically. It's in the hands of the user, and there is no conglomerate key which decides these are the rules. Then we arrive at DeFi. And DeFi is like a very strict version, if you see. मतलब ये सब criteria satisfy होने चाहिए तो सब DeFi है. But blockchain में आजकल it's more of कि KYC भी होता है. There is some form of centralization, government identities के साथ. So that is centrally governed DeFi, for example. कि कुछ तो, so we mostly work in these areas. So purely DeFi are rare and coming up, but mostly जो start हुआ है nowadays is like government wants this, कि some level of control हो हमारे पास, पूरा user के पास ना. So the basic premise of DeFi is that we need to have a financial infrastructure which is open to all, accessible. जैसे अभी 18 years के नहीं हो तो बैंक अकाउंट नहीं हो सकता. So we don't want that. Now that is a good step or bad. I don't want to debate on that, but basically you want people to have access. That's the thing. Now open का एक और application would be कि let's say you're going in a very small area, मतलब remote rural area में जा रहे हो, जिनके पास डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं होते, पैन कार्ड नहीं होता, आधार कार्ड नहीं होता, पासपोर्ट नहीं होता, यू कैंट हैव अ बैंक अकाउंट, राइट? एंड इफ यू सी स्टैटिस्टिक्स अबाउट, कम लोग हैं, 25% अराउंड ऑफ द एलिजिबल एडल्ट्स डोंट हैव अ सिंगल बैंक अकाउंट. सो दीज पीपल आर स्ट्रैंडेड, मतलब कैश में ही डील करते हैं पूरे टाइम. तो वी वांट टू रिमूव दैट कंप्लीटली कि anyone is eligible to have an account or anything in DeFi. It should be permissionless in the sense that uh, so here you have to like uh, talk with your bank, and a lot of intermediaries जो अंकल आते हैं वो भी intermediary. So all those things we want to avoid completely. Permissionless होना चाहिए. Highly interoperable and built on smart contracts. So highly interoperable in the sense that a lot of cryptocurrencies are there. There are a lot of Ethereum is one, and a lot of other chains are coming up, and L2 is layer 2 is also there, as you have seen in lecture 1 and 2. So we want all these to be connected, interconnected, right? मतलब disjoint होगा तो purpose छूट गया, फिर हर chain पे थोड़े users होंगे, and then DeFi का there is no point. So there is this thing called as bridges actually. So if you want to convert your tokens from one to another, or have your transactions in one currency to another, so there are bridges. A lot of people work on that. Interoperability is a very big and open problem in blockchain. काफी research होती है इस पे. And then we want, so what happened is, so I think this will make it more clear. Right. So these are some of the important moments in DeFi. So started with 2008, in 2008, obviously with Bitcoin and recovery from the financial crisis global. And then these are some of the milestones ki, let's say 2013 mein Ethereum ka first white paper dropped, I think 13, 14. And then this is MakerDAO, this is SushiSwap, right? ICO started around this period. And so a lot of things have started coming up. And if you see, it's about only 15 years that blockchain has truly come about. So even though it started with Bitcoin, 2008 में start हो गया था, but there was no medium कि developers like me and you, if you are interested in the technology, how do I make something, right? How do I make a company? How do I make a protocol on it? So all these are protocols, by the way. So Ethereum smart contracts enable that, and that's why here there is emphasis on public smart contract platforms, because Ethereum virtual machine is the most widely used platform right now, EVM. So right, so this question becomes important: ki centralized finance versus DeFi. So what do you think so far are the major differences? अगर एक भी बता दो तो सबसे important difference, या दो तीन जितने भी लगे. You understand the basic premise, right? तो open होना चाहिए, permissionless होना चाहिए. Anyone? Correct. Yeah. So you don't need to trust anyone but yourself. Correct. That could be one. One more difference probably. That is an important point. Take care. So 2008 crisis. Let's come back to that. So do you know which company, कौन सी company थी जिसके वजह से 2008 का housing market? So do you guys have a background on what happened exactly in 2008? So I'll give you just, so what happened was that housing mortgage bonds was a huge thing in US. So what happened was that, though a lot of terms, okay. So you have a property, let's say, right? So you want to use that property as a collateral and you want to say that, okay, I'm gonna bet on this, that the price of this is going to increase, right? And then this is called as futures or options if you see in the stock market. But essentially it is this कि तुम कुछ bet कर रहे हो. This is the amount I'm betting कि इतने साल में इतना grow होगा और इस पे मैंने $10 million लगा दिए. And so this is an example. That's not the scale actually. So what happens is that during that period from 2003 to 2008, housing market की prices like unusually inflate हो गए. इतने थे ही नहीं कभी property के prices. And then people just took loans which were like bad loans. उनके पास collateral नहीं था, but they kept on taking loans. Bank loans देने लगे क्योंकि they wanted more and more. They thought कि जितना loans देंगे ज़्यादा interest मिलेगा, हमारी growth accelerate होगी. So it became sort of a vicious cycle. And in 2008, there was this huge company, if you can Google, Lehman Brothers करके. So they triggered the collapse कि उनके बहुत सारे bonds fail हो गए. और उसके बाद एक कंपनी सबने देखा कि यार यहाँ नहीं हो रहा, यहाँ नहीं हो रहा, तो everyone started pulling their money out. And suddenly when everyone pulls their money out, so it's like a huge collapse in the stock market. Or US में होता है तो you feel it everywhere in the world, right? So central point of collapse. So this alone company was the trigger for this, and I don't know how many millions of people suffered, jobs lost हो गए जो भी हुआ. Stricter regulations were there after that. So uh, something like that is very common actually. We just don't pay attention. तो scams वगैरह भी इतने होते हैं. People मतलब Nirav Modi का ही देख लो, around 8,000 crores that single guy can take based on what was his collateral was that he had diamond manufacturing factories in Belgium. So that was his only collateral, and he borrows such huge amount of money. So banks are prone to taking erroneous decisions, and regulations evolve होते रहते हैं over time. But you see, मतलब कहीं भी एक point पे भी fail हो गया तो the entire system collapse. And DeFi में this is the most important thing, that even if one layer collapse, let's say one company, one protocol collapses, everything is like in your hands at the end of the day. So a lot of people won't suffer, right? जो chain होता है, मतलब chain of events की इसके बाद ये domino effect वो नहीं दिखता DeFi. So thanks for bringing it up. Right. So I think this. So this is the basic DeFi stack. So the right. So this picture is, I think, more relatable for you in the fact कि ये जो 5 entities है, right? एक broker होता है, एक exchange होता है, bank होती है, regulator and central bank. So can you tell? So central bank would be RBI in our case. Regulator would be the government, जो भी ministry है. Bank would be all the banks where you have your accounts, private, public. So HDFC is a private bank, for example, and SBI is a public bank. इसीलिए SBI का network कभी नहीं चलता, क्योंकि public bank है, right? And then you have exchanges, right? So मतलब shares वगैरह जहाँ भी exchange हो रहा है. And then you have the broker, who is the intermediary कि convince करता है कि इसमें invest करो, इसमें मत करो, right? The broker is usually a primary source of contact. And so if you see, fun fact is that let's say mutual funds में invest कर रहे हो, so I don't think any of you have invested, but the thing is that so it's either you go through the broker or you can invest yourself as well. So I personally I invest, so I try not to go through the broker. I had never invest through the broker because the thing is that if you're getting, let's say, 12% returns on the mutual funds in without a broker, and with a broker, let's say वो 0.3% ही लेता है, 11.7 मिलता है. But over, if you try to compound it over 15 years or 10 years, you'll see that the difference is huge. If you invest like 10,000 भी, तो difference बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाता है, 0.3% का. So that's why the commission, that's why they are very hell-bent कि बहुत कम commission पे भी they'll sell, because they know that if you keep it for long enough, वो commissions exponentially grow होता है. So anyway, so we have equivalents of everything. So central bank, we have reserved pegged assets and everything. So stable coins, just say that we'll call. Then we don't have an equivalent of banks per se, but so let's see. So wallet is basically like the wallet that you carry. So any token that you have is in a wallet. So MetaMask, I believe, install करवाया था कि इनसे MetaMask, Manoj? MetaMask install करवाया. A lot of you might have MetaMask though. So that is like a storage for you to keep your coins and everything. And then there are lending and borrowing platforms, which is the next topic. And then AMMs, automated market machines, and loans and algorithmic stable coins and everything. So, right. So, and do you see this oracle? It is somewhere in between, right? So, दोनों के इसमें between में है. So what this refers to is, we'll see it in detail later, is so you want to draw data from the real world. कि let's say एक smart contract trigger करना है जब ETH versus dollar की price $2,500 हो जाती है. Only then you want certain things to happen, right? Call 100 जो लोग कर रहे होंगे, if होता है ना, if statement or I don't know, whatever. So you want certain conditions to be satisfied and then something should happen. So their oracles are very useful because real time data say they are connected and they help in running things on the blockchain. And on the left is just various like broad categories, and then वही functions है, arbitrage, liquidation and everything. So a lot of these are like basic financial concepts. जैसे arbitrage कितने लोग को पता है क्या होता है? नहीं पता होगा. So it's actually very basic finance thing. So and this we'll see how arbitrage is exploited by a lot of people. But to give you a very let's say short example would be, so if you're in India, let's compare two countries, India and Japan ले लेते हैं. So India में let's say gold is at about 10,000 per gram. I don't know what the rate is, but let's say it is 10,000 per gram. Japan में है 12,000 per gram. तो तुम इंडिया से लेके जापान में बेचो. Purchase in India, you sell it in Japan to 2,000 का direct profit हो. Now it is not as easy as it sounds क्योंकि gold ले कैसे जाओगे? There are a lot of logistical issues and money में how will you do it? Obviously, but there are ways to exploit these price changes. And what happens is कि let's say यूरो टू INR, ठीक है? तो ये जो कन्वर्जन रेट है ये रियल टाइम में अपडेट नहीं होता. देयर आर स्मॉल टाइम लैग्स एवरीवेयर टू गेट द सिस्टम्स अपडेटेड, राइट? तो ऑफन वी compete ऑन दो स्मॉल टाइम मार्जिन्स की जितने टाइम में मेरे सिस्टम और योर सिस्टम में लेट्स से द चेंजेस आर बीइंग मेड, उतने टाइम में मैं बहुत बड़े अमाउंट का ट्रांजैक्शन कर दूंगा. सो दैट माई प्रॉफिट्स आर लाइक, दो द लेट्स से 12.1 से 12.2 ही हुआ है प्राइस डिफरेंस, बट मैं इतना ज्यादा वॉल्यूम में करूंगा कि those marginal profits also become great. So that is the basic concept of arbitrage. And then there are just market manipulation techniques and data. So lending, right? My topic. Yeah. So why is lending important in an economy? मतलब बैंक lend क्यों करती है? क्यों करना चाहिए lend? Louder. बोलो. क्यों करना चाहिए lend? हाँ? I cannot hear. So can you speak louder? हाँ, profits, correct. So profits for the like lender, right? So when you repay and then you get profits. But in general, an economy lending क्यों important is because सबके पास पैसे नहीं होते, right? You want loans, you want, so वही कि surplus जिसके पास है वो profits के लिए deficit वाले के पास देगा पैसे. So that is the premise of lending. And lending कभी ऐसे नहीं होता कि I ask a bank कि I need 10 lakh rupees for my education, उन्होंने 10 lakh दे दिया अगले दिन, right? There is a lot of paperwork, documentation, and most importantly is collateral. Collateral, do you understand what collateral means? Right? कि let's say 50 lakhs का लोन लिया, मुझे यूएस में एजुकेशन करना है और मैंने घर कोलैटरल पे दे दिया. And tomorrow COVID breaks down, I have to come back. University says that don't come back now, do it online. So you lose a lot of money, whatever, and you have to sell your house, right? Because that was the underlying collateral. So collateral is important, and a lot of people are not able to uh, have proper collateral in documented form. और इसकी वजह से a lot of people lose whatever they have क्योंकि मतलब clauses, जैसे villages में जाओगे तो उन्हें पढ़ना लिखना वो सब नहीं आता, तो फिर they don't understand what exactly collateral is, what are the clauses in which they lose their collateral. So a lot of cases you will see that they lose their collateral in no fault of theirs. मतलब लोन रीपे कर दिया होता है बट तब भी कोई क्लॉज होता है उन्होंने पढ़ा नहीं होता, साइन कर दी होती है, तो they lose it. So anyway, so one of the basic issues in inherent flaws in, I don't know should I call it flaws, but is that DeFi में there is always over collateralization. तो अगर 10 लाख का लोन ले रहे हो and you have let's say a plot of land which is worth 10 lakhs, तो बैंक तुम्हें दे देगी because on paper it is worth 10 lakhs today. But crypto में इतनी fluctuations होती है कि if you keep a collateral, so what kind of collaterals are acceptable is, let's say, if I want to, I have, let's say, 1,000 of Ethereum, right? 1,000 coins of Ethereum, which is too much, but yes, 1,000 coins of Ethereum. I want to convert it to Bitcoin, right? Not convert, so I want to borrow Bitcoin using those Ethereum, right? Converting swaps is a different thing, but I want to borrow Ethereum from somewhere without losing those original Bitcoin. So I'll keep those Bitcoin as a collateral somewhere, right? But वो ये नहीं बोलेंगे कि if you want, let's say, 200 Ethereum, तो उसके equivalent Bitcoin रखो, नहीं, वो बोलेंगे ज्यादा Bitcoin रखो, 300 के equivalent Bitcoin रखो, क्योंकि prices fluctuate so wildly कि पता नहीं कि collateral की value कम हो गई and then the loan that you have taken उसकी value increase हो गई, then जो repay करने वाला वापस आएगा ही नहीं, right? वो लेके भाग जाएगा, उसे कहीं और market में sell कर देगा. So it's hard to keep track. So because we are moving decentralized, so we don't have paperwork now. We don't know who is exactly borrowing the loan and what they are doing with the money. So we have to introduce certain mechanisms to prevent this. So over collateralization is done. And then consequently there is liquidation. कि let's say 200 Ethereum लिए, लेकिन जो मेरा collateral था Bitcoin, that was worth 300 Bitcoin, 300 Ethereum, right? So but तब भी इतने fluctuations हो गए कि वो 300 वो जो बिटकॉइन रखे थे, they have fallen below 200. There was such a wild fluctuation. तो in that case there are criterias where liquidate कर देते हैं, मतलब तुम्हारा जो collateral है, they just sell it off and then recover their money कि जिन्होंने lend किया है उन्हें loss ना हो. So very complicated concept probably, but it will be clear. So there are protocols actually. So akin to companies in Web2 and the normal world. So we have protocols in blockchain, as you must be aware. So these are a few of the famous protocols which actually lend money. So as I said, over collateralization needs to be done. And so Aave I mentioned, right? So here, this one. So this is Aave, and this is a screenshot from the Aave portal. And here you can see, so what is happening is very interesting. So see, so your collateral. So here, if you see, the collateral value is collateral value is $10,000, right? And what you have borrowed is just, is it visible? I hope it is now. So you have collateral is $10,000, whereas you have borrowed only 1,500. This is a bit weird, right? And it is not in dollars. If you see, you have deposited in DAI here, and you have borrowed uni tokens. So these are all the various currencies, and they have all been mapped to ki yahan pe you have deposited actually 10,000 DAI, and that is equivalent to, if you see, that is a small number ki 10,002, right, in dollars. That is its value, and you are just borrowing 1,500. So इतना drastic नहीं होता usually. So जैसे you see that there is a certain metric called as the health factor. वो भी green चल रहा है, तो जैसे ही वो red होगा, तो what happens is कि मैंने $10,000 worth का collateral रखा है and 1,500 ही borrow किया, which is a very great margin. मतलब fluctuations कितना ही हो जाएगा, 5-6 times तो नहीं होगा. So let's say I borrow 5,000. ठीक है, मैंने बढ़ा के borrow 5,000 कर दिया 1,500 से. So ये health factor कम होगा क्योंकि there is a lesser cushion now कि fluctuations हुए तो protocol can face issues, right? So health factor, how is it calculated is not relevant right now, but that is an indicator कि like how safe your borrowing is, right? And then there are a lot of different things. So APY is another interesting thing, is that what do lenders get out of it, right? पैसा कोई lend कर रहा है protocol में से, कोई borrow कर रहा है, तो पैसा आ कर रहा है protocol में, आवे में किसी को देना पड़ेगा ना, किसी को निकालने के लिए, right? So that has to come from lenders. So someone has to lend, just like in a bank, you keep your money for deposits and you get an interest. Similar model is there. But here, anyone can do it and you don't know who the money is coming from. कि मैंने, let's say, डाल दिया protocol में, and they tell me कि you will get a yield of, so APY is basically interest rate कह सकते हो, कि मैंने protocol में रखे, तो फिर this is sort of the returns that I'll get just from lending my money. So that is called as yield farming. So a lot of money is locked in yield farming कि जिनके पास excess coins होते हैं, मेरे पास 5 Ethereum पड़े हुए हैं, I'm not using it, so I'll give it to some lending protocol कि keep this, give me some interest on this, और जिसको loan लेना होगा तुम्हारे protocol में से ले लेगा. right? That is the idea. But in general, so if you're, so let's say Ethereum is the base currency in which you're making the deposits, and DAI is the currency in which you're, borrowing the loan. तो फिर ETH की वैल्यू हमेशा ज्यादा होगी DAI से. जितना तुम डिपॉजिट कर रहे हो एज अ कोलैटरल, उसकी वैल्यू हमेशा ज्यादा होगी एज अपोज टू बैंक्स में जहाँ पे इक्वल वैल्यू का रखते हैं, ड्यू टू दिस कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ओवर कोलैटरलाइजेशन. And then I answered this question myself. Okay, where does the liquidity come from? Is that there are lenders obviously who get a certain yield, right? So is under collateralized borrowing possible? What do you think? Should it be possible in DeFi at least? So actually there are ways where you can borrow under collateralized. I won't be going there now, but resources में share कर देंगे definitely. There are ways. So that's the thing with blockchain कि if you find a certain way to implement it, लोग कर देते हैं. यहाँ पे वो regulations नहीं होते हजारों की, RBI से approve करवाना है, government से करवाना है, बैंक में implement करवाना है, and those take years. मतलब वो सब नहीं होता. If anyone finds a way, they do it. And sort of experimentation चलती है, maybe successful, maybe not, but you get to see it very quickly कि हो रहा है कि नहीं हो रहा है, right? So there are ways where under collateralization borrowing is also possible. The mechanisms are slightly different though. We'll see that later. So there is an interesting new construct in blockchain. So this is called as flash loans. Okay, I'm slightly overshooting. Okay. So last two slide. So flash loans. So idea here is loans that you take, let's say for education, is a long-term loan, right? कि 2 साल बाद repay करना है, 3 साल बाद repay करना है, job लगने के बाद repay करना है, and so on and so forth. घर लिया तो you pay it back in installments, right? EMI sort of. So here there is an interesting concept because of the fluctuations that are there. That's why this model works. It's called as flash loans. कि you borrow at, let's say, time instant X, right? अभी मैंने borrow किया and I repay the loan within 10 seconds, right? 10 seconds में you borrow, you do whatever transaction you do, and you've given it back as well. So you might be wondering कि 10 सेकंड में ऐसा क्या कर लिया होगा, right? And मतलब इतना कैसे ही कर लिया? And the answer for this is basically कि fluctuations ही इतने ज्यादा है कि even 10 seconds में, let's work it out actually. So let's say 1500 price, ठीक है? At, let's say right now. So let's say this is ETH to dollar. Right? So 1 ETH is worth, let's say, $1,500. And let's say with 10 seconds, so this is at t is equal to 0 right now, and t is equal to, let's say, 10 seconds. This is, let's say, 1501. Right? So we $8 के इसमें तो profit नहीं हो पाएगा ना साला. But what I do is I won't borrow 1 Ethereum, right? I'll do it like मैं 10,000 Ethereum buy करूँ. And then I'll find some scheme where this is happening. Now you can't predict कि एक 10 सेकंड में ऊपर जाएगा नीचे जाएगा, right? Now that is the chance that you're taking. So not necessarily you have to invest in a currency, but you can invest it in any other avenue as well. जहाँ पे इतने short period of time में you're guaranteed a profit. You know कि let's say 1500 से 1500.05 भी होता है. And if I do this times 10,000, I still get $500, which is still pretty decent money, right? To earn in 10 seconds. So the idea of flash loans is this: कि फटाफट कर दो within a span of few minutes or seconds, right? And then this obviously एक डाउट तो आ ही रहा होगा कि पंप एंड डंप कर सकते हैं, जैसे आर्बिट्राज एक्सप्लेन किया मैंने, तो आर्बिट्राज के लिए तो ये बेस्ट है ना, मतलब you buy it from a market where it is low priced and then sell it when it is high priced, and when the volume exceeds, यहाँ पे 10,000 किया है, but ऐसे बहुत लोगों को पता है अपॉर्चुनिटी एग्जिस्ट करती है, they all will do it, constantly कर रहे होते हैं लोग अभी भी. So इतने ज्यादा वॉल्यूम पे होता है तो फिर देयर इज अ हाई चांस कि मतलब बहुत ज्यादा फ्लक्चुएशंस हो जाए, कि फ्लक्चुएशंस को कैपिटलाइज करने में हमने और ज्यादा फ्लक्चुएशंस कर दिया उसमें. तो सच थिंग्स आर देयर एंड दैट्स व्हाई देयर आर डिफरेंट सेट ऑफ रेगुलेशंस कि ईच प्रोटोकॉल में तुम इतना ही बोरो कर सकते हो, पहले रीपे नहीं किया तो यू कांट बोरो मोर. और एंड देन ऑब्वियसली व्हेन यू फ्लैश लोन्स भी है, सो दीज आर द, लेट्स से, प्रोटोकॉल्स व्हिच ऑफर फ्लैश लोन्स. तो दे चार्ज सम फी कि 10 सेकंड बाद भी ले रहे हो, बट यू गिव बैक 0.3% मोर देन व्हाट यू टुक. 10,000 लिया तो 10,300 वापस करना, 10,030 whatever. And this is sort of the fee, that is it. And then similarly, there is this idea called collateral swapping. It is self-explanatory, so I won't delve into it. But The idea basically is that you have, let's say, one Ethereum, and you want to convert it into, USDC, the currency. So how do you do it using sort of the flash loan concept or something? So that's what it explains. So let's move on. Basil. Slightly overshoot कर रहे हो.
I don't think I require a mic, right? ठीक है. Cool. Okay. माइक बंद करता हूँ. ठीक है. Okay. Hello guys. हाँ. नहीं नहीं. I think it's fine, right? Everybody can hear me. Cool. If I want. Cool. Okay. So hi guys. My name is Basil. I'm a coordinator at Blockchain Society. So we'll start with my part, which is automated market makers. Before that, actually, it is very heartening to see how much we have progressed from lecture 1, right? So how many of you here, let's say, have development experience before? I mean, I'm assuming most of you are first year people, right? So मतलब development experience उतना तो नहीं होगा. And how many of you can understand Hindi? Okay, fine. So it will be a mix of both. Fair enough. So अभी तक जितना तुम लोग बोर हुए, as you can see, we are mostly talking about finance, right? And one question to ask is, you should step back and ask, like, why is this even necessary, right? Why are we discussing about finance itna zyada? And the simple answer is basically, as Anup said, is that in the blockchain ecosystem, everything is permissionless, which means that if you have an idea, it is very easy to implement it and actually let it release it in the wild and see how it turns out. Okay, we look at multiple ideas that have been implemented. One of the beautiful ideas is AMMs, and we'll see how it makes facilitates transactions in the decentralized space. And if you are looking forward to being a Web3 developer, one of the major pillars of Web3 development is DeFi. So you can always come back and look at various ideas that are here in DeFi and even come up with more ideas. Fair enough. We'll start, I guess, because we are limited on time. Let's start with. Okay, that's a fancy animation. So why do we need AMMs? I दिख रहा है, ठीक है. So basically, if you look at conventional lending, which is the one that the banks give you, it is basically there has to be natural demand and supply for both. For example, there has to be a buyer, there has to be a seller for an asset, right? And the responsibility of the bank or the exchange, the place where that transaction takes place, is only to facilitate and match those two people, right? Which is something called the order book model, where there's like this list of people who are saying that, okay, I want to buy X amount of something and I want to buy Y amount of the other thing. And then the matchbook person just notices these and then he says, okay, these two people can have a transaction together. That is what the conventional model is. This has been used in centralized finance for ages and also in some of the DeFi protocols. Now, what we ask is, like, the very fundamental question that you would want to ask is, what if we can somehow create not artificial, well, more like programmatic supply, or let's say programmatic supply for a particular asset. Now, what I mean by that is basically this: a marketplace where if you want to transact for an asset, you can always find a market for it. Which means that there's never a time when you can say that, okay, there is nobody who's willing to buy my grain of salt, therefore I cannot have a transaction. Now, this is bad for the economy, right? Because you might want to use that money to, buy new tractors and start a new business. But since there is no buyer for your grain of salt, you cannot start a transaction. I mean, you cannot start your business, which is bad for the economy, right? How are we able to solve this problem? That is where AMMs come in. But the purpose of this slide is for you to understand the essence of, or the importance of the problem, right? What we're trying to solve is, we're saying that people do not need to have some sort of there doesn't need to be two people in order to have a transaction or in order to facilitate the economy to progress, right? And now we'll look at how the DeFi ecosystem sort of facilitates that. So we'll talk about Uniswap here. This guy is Hayden Adams. He founded Uniswap in 2018. Why did I put this here? And he's currently worth $300 million. Why did I put this here? Look at the timeline, right? It's just 5 years back, right? So let's talk about Uniswap here for a minute. What is Uniswap? Uniswap is a marketplace, okay? And if you are looking at it from the developer's perspective, it is a set of smart contracts deployed on the Ethereum mainnet. Okay. And what are smart contracts? Smart contracts are programs that you write in Solidity. So that is essentially what it is, right? Just a bunch of smart contracts that are worth $300 million. Fair. So if you look at Uniswap, what it does is, if you want to create transaction, or if you want to create a market for, let's say, some particular asset, what you want to do is you want to set a price for it. That is pretty natural, right? You want to have a price for an asset. And in the case of the order book model, the price is naturally set by the market, because there will be a number of people who want to buy an asset, there'll be a number of people who want to sell that asset. And based on the relative difference between these, the price of the value is set as being more valuable or less valuable with respect to a token. In our case, it will be INR. In case of the US economy, it will be the USD, right? Now, if there is no, let's say, if you want to create a 24/7 marketplace, the problem is, how do you set the price? And this is where the Uniswap innovation comes in. It basically says that the price of a particular asset can be set using a mathematical formula that we will hard code in the smart contract itself. Now, the beauty of this process, the beauty of this particular approach is that nobody can mutate the smart contract or change the protocol's objectives, right? Which means that the formula that is inside the contract will always be respected, which means that there is absolutely zero chance of a fraud happening. Okay, so this contract takes care of demand and supply, sets the exchange rate, and that is cool. Okay, food for thought. So let's say, so basically the question is, this is what an automated market maker is, right? A market maker is basically, you're making the market, you are providing a marketplace for a particular asset, and it's automated because there is basically the contract is doing it itself. There is no third person, there's no seller that needs to be there for you to transact. Now the question is, why do you think AMMs are possible in the DeFi ecosystem and not in the centralized finance? Okay, which is something to think about. And secondly, this is a much deeper question, which I just put it there for fun, which is, if you look back and if you try to question, why is it that AMMs are even possible in the blockchain technology? And the answer is basically that blockchains are immutable, which means that there will be no person who would come in and say that, okay, the formula that you have used, it will be changed and some other formula will be used, which will be beneficial for me, right? So this is one property of the blockchain that has been exploited to create an AMM. The question is, what other still unknown unknown financial systems are yet to be discovered that will exploit other properties of the blockchain? So these are yet, deep questions that we can go into. Fair enough. Let's move into the more interesting part. 1 minute. Good. So let's talk about tokenomics, which is, how many of you have come across this term tokenomics used anywhere? It is basically two words mixed together, right? It's tokens and economics, right? So it is basically what it implies. It is the economics. It is the process of designing an economics for a token distribution. So what is a token? Can anybody give me an example of a token? Bitcoin is a token, Ethereum is a token, INR is a token, USD is a token, NFTs are tokens, right? Basically any tradable asset, a very loose definition, which is perceived to be valuable. Again, there are two types of tokens, fungible tokens and non-fungible tokens. I think, these are pretty basic English definitions. Fungible basically means that they're non-unique, which means that if you have 2 units of that asset, it will be interchangeable. So which means that if you have one, I have one, I mean, those have the same values. Where there's NFT, which are unique, which means that they're just like one copy of it or something like that. Okay, and both of them are valuable. Fair. When you want to design tokenomics, now tokenomics itself is a very broad and deep science, and I mean, a lot of people are still researching on how to do it properly. Okay. I mean, when you are trying to come up with your own DeFi protocol, this is something that you would face, which is designing, answering these questions, which is basically, let's say I have a token called PAS, because why not? So, I mean, the first question I want to ask is, what will be the method of creating this token, right? So, how many of you are aware of what inflation is or what deflation is? So, I'll give you a brief example. So, these are what economic concepts that you would have to understand in order to answer these questions. I'll give you a brief idea of what inflation is. Basically, it is, let's say, in an economy, there is the RBI, which is responsible for printing money, right? And so basically, I think somebody might have thought of it when they come across this idea. Why not the RBI just print more money? Okay? And then everybody can be rich. So can somebody answer why? Like, value will decrease. Value will decrease.
Value will decrease, then you have to pay with higher amount.
That is true. Yeah, that is true. I mean, because it's like what happened in Germany in 1930. Like they had to take a wheelbarrow of like German mark to buy a pound of bread. That is true. But the question is, why is that happening? Like in a very fundamental level, why do you think? Right, purchasing power is a way to say, or I mean, it's basically this, that let's say it's human tendency, right? If I have 10 pieces of something, and then if I have 100 pieces of something, the problem is if I have 100 pieces of that thing, then more people can have it, therefore the value decreases. I mean, people are always looking for having something that is scarce, right? That was the basic idea why gold was used as a standard, but that is the history of money. We can link to resources for that, and you can, again, it's a fascinating history. Money itself is a fungible token, by the way, which means that it is interchangeable and it holds value. Okay. So the basic idea is, when I want to create my own token, right? I have to grapple with this question of what will be the method of creating the token, right? I mean, which is basically what minting is, the same thing as printing money. So how will I create that token? What would be the distribution of token over time? Which means that should I release all the tokens on the first day of creation, or should I release it over a span of time? And all of these will have different effects on the what? On the method of interaction of the token by the users, right? The people will have different incentives, and we will come back to that also. I mean, then the second question is very obvious. Should it be finite or infinite? Infinite is possible because it's all digital, right? There is no physical asset to back that, which means that you do not need a certain amount of gold to have a certain amount of money in the economy. You can just have a variable and increment it as much as you want. So that is why this is possible. And the question is, should you even have it? What are the effects of having infinite supply of a particular good in the economy? Is it even good? Any thoughts? So there are arguments to it, which is again beyond beyond this discussion, but something to think about. Second is distribution. Again, what percentage of this token? So let's say I create this token, very nice. This is my token. In my contract, I probably just write something like, something uint x. You know what uint x is, right? People who have done solidity wala cheez. How many of you have done lecture 2? Like watch the lecture or anything, or have basic idea of solidity? Fair enough. You guys are doing call 100, right? What is the language that you're using? C, enough. Fair enough. So you know what data types are, right? So uint x, uint is a data type. Those are 32. Take a 32 value. So basically, what you'll write is you'll basically declare a variable, right? Total supply is equal to some value. That is what you'll do. And as you will distribute it, you'll decrement this value. That is fair enough. But the question is, let's say I create this token, right? And I want to release it in the wild. The problem is this token does not have any value because people do not know about it. Does that make sense? which means if I want to have people actually use it for transaction, which means that, I mean, why do you guys value USD? It's a very human psychological reason.
It's very stable.
Nah, I'm fair enough, but why do you guys want to acquire USD? It's a very simple reason. Do you guys actually want USD? What do you want? Okay, fair enough. You want INR, but do you actually want INR? Is INR valuable to you? Yes. Yes. So the goods and services that INR provide is valuable to you, right? But you want to acquire INR because you trust that the economic system or the financial system will facilitate you to exchange your INR for other goods and services. Does that make sense? And that is what everybody's doing. The problem with kickstarting a new token is that there is no way for you to create value for that token in the eyes of the other person. Does that make sense? And that is why you will hear these fancy things on Twitter called airdrops. Right. I'm not sure if you know. So, okay. Airdrops. Airdrops are basically the creator of the token is trying to kickstart the token's popularity, therefore making it a medium of exchange. That's pretty much it. And they do this free of cost because there is actually no intrinsic value for the token yet. So this is what distribution comes under, right? What percentage of the supply will be distributed freely? What percentage will be traded? Where to trade? Where to trade is again an interesting question because some contracts are exclusive, which means that you only want them to be traded at a particular address. And some of the, some of the tokens are exclusive, which means you want it to be traded at a particular address. Okay, address. Wait. You know where smart contracts are deployed, right? They're, I mean, how a person can communicate with a smart contract. It is published. It is somewhere stored on somewhere on the mainnet, and it has an address, and you talk to that address, right? Basic ideas, fine, right? Take care. Now there are some centralized exchange, right? I mean, Anup talked about Aave, Maker, the other one, Uniswap, etc. These are all marketplaces, right? And do you want your token to be freely traded in these markets? This is again one question that you would want to answer. These are all design choices. Okay, these are all design choices. What a design choice means, there is no right or wrong. It is up to you, the protocol designer, to decide what you want, how you want to design your token, and what the main point for you will be to anticipate what effects it will have on the behavior of the user using your token, which we'll get to again. And thirdly, there is destruction. So destruction is basically, so let's say you have a game. Okay, it's a DeFi game. I mean, burnability is again used very much there. And let's say the protocol is designed in a way that you get an NFT for every level that you clear. Okay, which means that if you have a level 100 NFT, okay, that means that you have spent 100 hours of work on that game. Now the question is, now clearly that NFT 100 NFT 100 hour NFT has value, right? The question is, do you, I mean, what happens if you allow a person to burn that as in destroy that NFT, right? So are you actually destroying value? Again, questions that you can think about. Okay. Another example can be this. Let me think first. Let's say you are in an economy, okay, and there are, let's say, 10K units of money that is acceptable in the economy. Let's say it is INR. Okay, this is the total supply of INR in circulation. Okay, but somebody feels that this is deflating, which means that there is okay. So basically, what I say is, let's say I burn, or let's say I get to 2000 INR units and I destroy them. Okay, I just destroy them. So what happens to the remaining 8K INR? It's basic demand and supply. It will become more valuable, right? It will become more valuable with respect to the USD. same sort of idea can be used in this particular destruction. I mean, this to answer this question, should you make your tokens vulnerable? What effects it will have on the behavior of users using your token? Same thing. I'm taking care of the inflation and deflation. Too much time spent on this. Now let us get to some mathematics. I think this will be more appealing to some of you. We'll talk about bonding curves. So let's say we'll start with this. Remember, we talked about the formula, right? Like there has to be a formula for you to set the price of the asset, right? What formula are we supposed to use, right? That is what we'll try to figure out. A basic idea is this. Like the formula that Unisoft uses is constant product formula, xy equal to k. It basically says, and it is very intuitive, right? If you have two assets, A and B, to have a more definite example, let's say we have BAS and we have ETH. Okay. I want to create a marketplace for this. I want to create an AMM for this. What I'll do is, if let's say someday somebody says that I want to buy a lot of BAS, okay, which means that as the reserve of BAS is decreasing in the contract and increasing in the economy, I want to make sure that the price of BAS with respect to ETH increases because it is becoming more valuable to other people, right? And similarly, vice versa. And a good way to encapsulate this mathematically is using this formula. It is fairly easy to understand. It basically says that the X and Y are basically the supply of asset A and supply of asset B. So there's always a inverse relation between them. So if you have more of asset A, the price of asset B will decrease and so on. Okay. Generalizing this, this graph that you see is basically a set of family of curves of the form y equal to mx to the power n, where m and r values. Okay. And what we want to know is the last sentence is interesting. It is basically, and we'll work out an example of this. It basically says that different bonding curves have different, they are able to motivate different behavior from different users. Okay, we'll look at how that works. One more thing is that in this curve, y is the price of the asset and x is the supply of that asset. Okay, so we are basically trying to relate what was the price of an asset based on the supply that it has in the contract as of yet. Okay, how it works in the way that, you know, I have a contract, I want to create this. I will load my contract with a balance of 10K this and 10K this, or whatever exchange rate I want to have between them. Okay, and then the job of the contract will just be to set the price in a way, like increasing or decreasing it, we'll see there, such that the product is a constant. Okay, which means that roughly at all times, my contract will always have the constant supply of both ETH and BAS, which is indirectly saying that there will always be a market for BAS and ETH on my contract, right? It means that if I want to buy ETH, I can always go here and I'm assured that there'll always be 10K units of this, right? So there's always a market for me. Okay, and let's work out this example. All right, so can I point to this? Okay, basically look at how this is working. Okay, so let's say there are two people in the economy. Okay, there are two people who want to buy and sell an asset. Let's call them A and B. Okay, and the bonding curve for my particular contract is this, which is y equal to x, simplest bonding curve. And what happens is one day A says, I want to buy supply of tokens. Okay, let's say I want to buy 10 units of the token. Okay, which means that at 0, A will be buying at what will the price of it? The price of the asset 0. Then again it will shift because like a demand बढ़ गया. So it will shift to 1, 2, 3 and sorry 0 पे 1 है तो ₹1 में पहले मतलब $1 में उसने buy किया. Then it will go to 2, 3, 4 etc. And as the person will set the order for 10 units of the token, उसको कितना पे करना पड़ेगा टोटल? एरिया अंडर कर्व, एरिया अंडर दिस कर्व, राइट, which is basically 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 up to 10. Does that make sense? I'm basically saying that when I buy the first token, I am changing the price according to the formula, right? So the very act of buying a very small unit, I mean, यहाँ पे for simplification, we have said that fractional values are not allowed, just to understand. But the basic idea is, I mean, in the actual Uniswap protocol, fractional values are allowed. यहाँ पे it's basically saying that since you are buying an asset, you are increasing demand for it. Therefore, according to the formula, the price will go up. Okay. So when I'm buying the second token, I'm buying it as 3 rupees or whatever, right? And so on going forward. And then basically the total amount I pay for my order would be calculated using this formula. And this entire order token is again as an integral, fancy अगर तुमको लिखना है तो integral fxjx कर दो. This is computed in the smart contract using the solidity code. ठीक है. उसपे भी there is a catch, which is, do you know what gas price is? Gas price is basically the cost that that you have to pay for creating a transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, right? And if you have fancy calculations, you can, I mean, the gas price will go up, which means that the transaction itself will become redundant. But if you are able to profit, let's say 1 rupees, and the chain is asking you to pay 1.5 rupees, you're not paid, right? So that is why it is the developer's job to have simple curves. That is why, like, you cannot have fancy curves. But okay, that's aside. Moving on, what happens now is that in the contract, because you have paid 55 rupees, the current price of the token is now $10, right? Now let's say B wants to buy 10 more, 10, let's say B now wants to buy 10 units of the token. How much price will be paid? How much price will be paid? For the 10th token, he will be paying $10. For the 11th token, he will pay 11, and so on. Area under curve again, and the amount is 155, right? Interesting thing to note is, let's say after B has finished the transaction, A wants to sell. What will happen now? A wants to sell. Let's say A is a female. ठीक है, मेरे को pronounce में problem हो रहा है. Let's say A is a female. Now A wants to sell. So how much will she gain from that selling? I mean, remember that she can always sell because it's a market that is 24/7 open. So you just backtrack and she will gain $155, which means that she makes a profit of $100. And now if B wants to sell, he will be at a loss of $100. Right. So these are the sort of, so can somebody just summarize what sort of behavior we have incentivize a user to have? I mean, see, a rational user would always want to have a profit, right? A rational user would always want to have a profit. In this particular, using this bonding curve, what sort of behavior we have motivated the user to have? Like, this is completely, like, we have not enforced anything on the user, but the user will naturally do it. Yes. So basically buying early. So we are incentivizing the user to buy a token early, right? And then have a profit out of it when it later becomes valuable. So these are the sort of thinking that you can, like, basically think about. Again, other curves, other shapes incentivize other kind of behavior. So that one probably you would know, that's a sigmoid function, that is an exponential function, this is flattening, and that is a constant price. सबसे boring वो last वाला है. Okay, let's talk about this one, which is the sigmoid function. Can somebody just look at it and do a little analysis of what will happen or what sort of behavior the users of this particular protocol will have? Like, basically, there's an asset which is governed by this bonding curve, right? Like, somebody wants to buy, what level of price will he or she have to pay? Let's say somebody else also buys, then somebody wants to sell. Just do a basic analysis. Just I'm going to be like, do an analysis on this. It's an interesting thing to note. Like, what I'll tell you obviously, but थोड़ा सोचो उसके बारे में. If anybody wants to, like, volunteer or just say कि क्या हो सकता है. What does your intuition say? Like gut feeling क्या हो रहा है कि क्या होगा? See, obviously, if a person is buying in the early days, ठीक है, so उसको बहुत कम पैसे देने पड़ता है, ठीक है, the area is very less, and if this somehow this threshold is reached, if this threshold is reached, उसके बाद the person will get like a very high value of money for whatever assets that they have, right? And eventually, what will happen? It will shift somewhere down, but will it go below this transition point? No. What will happen is that basically the buyers and sellers will reach an equilibrium, and the price will sort of stabilize at a particular value. Like think about it, why this will happen. Again, it's an interesting thing to. I mean, it's pretty obvious why this will happen, but why this will happen. Moving on, and also you can similarly you can do an analysis now. Similarly, you can do an analysis for the other two. Effects of ये मैंने बताया था, effects of complexity of bonding function, which basically means कि if you have a very complex function y equal to k log x plus c to the power sin x plus y, ठीक है, नहीं करना because you cannot compute that on the smart contract, ठीक है. Simple चीजें करते हैं, y equal to mx plus c or something like that, ठीक है. Last slide from my end. Basically, we have talked about what AMMs are, how they can be designed, and we have like thrown a lot of design questions. Basic question: what are the disadvantages of AMMs? Like, matlab, are they always itna zyada cool? So no, we'll talk about two things. There are obviously more problems that happen, but let's just talk about slippage, front running, and nested curves. Just think about this thing. What happens is AMMs do not actually follow the natural market supply price for a particular asset. Okay, it always lags behind because compute करता है, ठीक है, which means and the market supply and demand is the price of the free market. Free market is the exchange where you can have the asset traded. The question is, what happens if, let's say, I see a price of, ये तो बहुत गंदा हो गया. Let's say I see a price of 5k for a token, 5k for a token, and I say that I can afford this, and I place an order for, let's say, some 100 tokens, 100 units of token. Okay. Now the problem is, since the transaction takes some time to go through, what if the price fluctuates in that time span and you're basically not getting the order that you have placed? This is what slippage is slippage is, and a more vicious problem is front running, which is basically some bad person identifying that you have set up large, like basically have a large order that you have placed, and they are able to identify that they can profit from it by buying the asset. Okay, thereby manipulating the price in a way where they're able to reap a benefit at your loss. Okay, this is what front running attacks are. And so again, these are very deep core tech problems. Solutions, there are multiple solutions, but again, you can always think about how you can solve these problems. One particular idea is what is called MEV. You can Google it up or Google या फिर research कर लेना इसके ऊपर. MEV are what is minor extractable value. Not going to that, but something that you can look into. Nested curves, basically, इसका भी एक example लेते हैं basic सा. ठीक है. Basically saying that ABT is again a token that I have created out of nothing. ABT is pegged to ETH with a reserve ratio of 50%. Reserve ratio बताना पड़ेगा. Wait. Okay, let's simplify this. Basically, I'm saying is, let's say I have my token BAS, okay, and let's say I have another token CLT. Okay, so there are three tokens in the picture now. There is ETH, BAS, and there is CLT. Now there's obviously a contract. There's a market maker for ETH to BAS, which is the deployed contract. What somebody else does is they do not know that this relation exists, and they sort of create a new AMM for this BAS to CLT exchange. The problem is, in very simple terms, the volatility will be multiplied, right? Because it will be amplified, which means that the amount of, let's say if there is a one $1 drop in this relation and there's like a $2 drop in this relation, मतलब इनके बीच में जो amplification होगा, it will be much more because the underlying asset that actually provides value is only ETH. BAS is just like the token that derives value from ETH. Does that make sense? Okay, and that is what has been described there. Okay, and reserve ratio is again something that you can Google up, but uske resources bhi डाल देंगे. Just do not have the time to go through that. So basically, that is two major problems that AMMs face. An obvious solution is just to limit the number of nesting that you can allow for nesting allowed for tokens, like number of peggings that you can allow. Okay, with that, I think I am done. Thank you very much for being a patient audience. Okay. Now Manoj will take with the Oracles development. बस 15 minutes.
Guys, I won't take a lot of time. I'll go fast. So we guys know US dollar, USD, right? And how many of you know USD coin? USDC? Never heard of it, right? It is USD on blockchain. It is backed with fiat USD off chain, and on blockchain they issue USD coin. Okay. So now let's move into stablecoins. We discussed a lot about automated market makers, liquidity pools, volatility, liquidity, so on, so on, so on. But these all are possible if and only if we have some stablecoin. You see, let's go into a situation. Okay. Let's say I was living in an area. My government announced that the area I'm living nearby is going to have a IT corridor, and they're having plans for it. They announced it publicly. Okay, what I did, they announced it that X area is going to have a IT corridor. Okay, so I bought a piece of land with the plans either to relocate to the land or sell it at a higher price later after the IT corridor is developed. So either I realize profits or either I get a better life there. I bought land at place Y, which is much near to place X. Okay, so after 1 year, what happened? Government said IT corridor has been shifted to place Z. Okay. And place Z is much far from place X and place Y. So what happened? I invested some value. After the announcement, the prices rose up, but I invested on a thought that I will realize profits later. But what happened when government later announced that Z is going to be the place where IT corridor is coming? The amount I invested lost its value. My asset literally lost its value. I mean, now if I try to sell it, I'm going to realize losses. Okay. So if coming to the case of DeFi mechanisms, you invested something in Uniswap. It's a highly volatile cryptocurrency. You made it as a liquidity. It as a one of the pair in liquidity pool. Okay. But somehow after 1 week, it lost its value. Will you be accepting that situation? No one accepts it. At least we won't accept it if its price drops abruptly. We may accept it if its price goes high abruptly. Okay. So there comes the necessity of stable coins. What stable coins does, before moving into that part, can any one of you say what this graph resembles? It's one of the most familiar thing and recent hot topic. Maybe around 10 months ago it happened. It is an Indian company. There were few allegations made on that company. Shortlisting, Hindenburg. Yeah, any hand? Yeah, Adani Group. So what happened? All of a sudden, price value of Adani Group fell down at the end of the January this year, right? So that is an example of how volatile it is. But now let's observe this graph. So what's in this graph? We are seeing a large red and green spikes. Okay. You may think that its price is also fluctuating a lot, but I say its price is not at all fluctuating a lot. If we go and observe this index, price index, how much is it fluctuating? At max 1.05, 1.00, or else 0.95. So how much is it fluctuating? 5 cents. At max 5 cents for 1 minute, or for a duration of less than 1 minute, right? So this is acceptable for us, isn't it? it is acceptable. So this is a stable coin called USDC, which is backed with USD. Okay. So now let's get into how stable coins function with a simple example. Okay. I'm Manoj and I gave a slip which has some conditions written on it, like Basil is giving me 1 ounce. Whoever gives me back that slip, I'll give them the 1 ounce back, 1 ounce of gold back. That condition were written on the slip which I'm issuing. Okay. Basil took that slip, he gave me 1 ounce of gold, and Basil gave that slip to some other person, and the transactions kept on happening with the slip having or possessing the value of 1 ounce. You see, the simple thing, it was backed with 1 ounce of gold. Basil won't do a foolish thing selling it for value of ½ ounce of gold, or else another person X won't be so foolish buying it for value of 2 ounces of gold, because whenever he wants to realize gold from the slip, he get only 1 ounce. Why would he pay the price of 2 ounces? Unless and until if we lie up an extraordinary story over it, like the slip is having some superpowers or something else, right? So this is a simple story to explain how stable coins function. So now get into different types of stable coins. Okay. Fiat pegged stable coins, algorithmic stable coins, and crypto backed stable coins. Fiat pegged stable coins are something similar to what I explained in the last example. What I explained, 1 ounce of gold is bagged with that slip. So whoever comes to me with that slip, I'm going to give them 1 ounce of gold back. Here, what happens is a coin like USDC maintains an off-chain reserve, say 1 million. So they prove everyone that their bank accounts are having 1 million, and they issue 1 million tokens on chain. And whoever pays 1 million for them, whoever pays $1 for them, they issue 1 USDC on chain to them. So if anyone want to get USD back, what they do, they give their on-chain USDC coin back to the developer of the USDC and get their USD back, which is fiat. Okay. Is it clear? Okay. Next, go to algorithmic stablecoins. What algorithmic stablecoins happens is its price value is maintained as stable because of some algorithms monitor the demand and supply of the coin. If there is a lot of demand for the coin, so its value or price increases. So to keep the price constant, a lot of supply is infused into the algorithmic stable coins supply. If supply is too much and demand is too low, what happens? The total supply gets decreased. Let's say there are 100 coins and people want 40 coins immediately. So whoever is selling those 40 coins, they may place the price higher. But that algorithm, what it does, it infuses 100 more coins so that the price of all the coins after the sale will remains constant to the previous one before the sale. Clear with that? So crypto-backed stablecoins. Crypto-backed stablecoins, what do they do? Instead of USD as a collateral, there may be ETH as a collateral, BTC as a collateral, or it is pegged to ETH or BTC, and you get that crypto. What happens here is it would be a constant value of ETH. Let's say I'm issuing one coin for 0.01 ETH. Okay, after X amount of days, even if you come to me, I'll give you 0.01 ETH only. Even if the ETH price goes too high, or even if the ETH price goes too low, you get 0.01 ETH. So here it is crypto backed stable coin. Okay. So DAI is a crypto backed stable coin. So if we talk about total stablecoin supply, it is around 100 billion in its peak time. So 100 billion is not a small number. Okay. And if we talk about stablecoin volume, there is a fun fact. How many of you are aware of MasterCard and Visa? Most of us, right? What MasterCard and Visa does, they enable debit and credit card transactions. So the yearly volume of stablecoin transactions is around 18 trillion, whereas MasterCard is 14 trillion and Visa is around 9 trillion. Maybe it's not 9 trillion, sorry. It's not in 9 trillion, but the numbers are 14, 18 and 9. Okay. I'm not clear about trillion. So coming to the last section, I gave you guys something to think, right? How do we connect real world data with the blockchains? Any answers? I think the answer is also discussed in the class previously. What is it? Oracles? And any other thing? Oracles enable real world to connect with blockchain. How blockchain communicates with real world? The back way. How is it? Okay, let's get into it. So what Oracles does? Oracles, let's say there is a game between two people. Let's say the game is between Ellis and Bob. And the game is Indian cricket team is going to win the match against Pakistan. They bet 100 ETH. And fortunately, Indian team won. And Ellis placed a bet that Indian team will win with Bob. So Ellis needs to get that 100 ETH. And that 100 ETH is logged in a smart contract. So how is that smart contract going to know that Ellis won? Simply we say some person will click and say that Ellis won. But is that feasible given the nature of the smart contracts and blockchain? You shouldn't need any trusted setup, right? Let's say a malicious scenario. Ellis, Bob, and you. Okay. Bob made an agreement with you that he will give 20 ETH if she maliciously marks Bob as the winner. Is that acceptable? No, right? So to prevent these type of things, there comes decentralized Oracle networks. Oracles are simple. Oracles connect blockchain and the real world. That's simple. But to enable decentralization and to communicate in a decentralized and acceptable way, there comes decentralized Oracle network called DONs. And who provides this type of DONs? It's Chainlink. Okay. And what are the use case of Oracles? We discussed about DeFi a lot, right? Price of DeFi, how price of DeFi varies on chain, and how is it going to stay in sync. So this all happens with Oracle data feeds. These data feeds are used by smart contracts to fetch the pricing. So if pricing is fetched, later on DeFi transaction, DeFi things can happen on chain. And it is also used for insurance and dynamic NFTs. And this is Chainlink ecosystem. And I don't want to take much of your time on Chainlink ecosystem. It's simple. It connects every sort of Web3 thing with analogy to Web2 thing and makes off-chain computations and put it on-chain, right? So this solved the first issue, Oracles. But what about blockchain communicating with real world? There comes events emitted by blockchain. We'll discuss about events emitted by blockchain either in pre-readings or in assignment. For today, that's all. If you guys have any doubt, let's interact after this session outside this lecture hall, okay?